lived with you at any time since Nancy died?
Yes.
During what period of time?
Both my parents came down after Nancy's death, and my mom stayed for a few weeks and returned home, and then came down 2 weeks later and stayed for another month, and returned back to Medicine Hat after that.
When did she return back the second time to Medicine Hat?
I would say it was about late September 26th to the 30th, sometime in there.
To your knowledge, does she intend to move back to Cary at any time?
She offered to come down and stay and help out, yes.
When?
She was going to return approximately October the 10th.
To your residence?
Correct.
And how long will she be staying at your residence?
She offered to stay up to a year, but I don't think that... basically, the idea was for her to stay and help me any way I needed, just to get over this the transition period.
Now, how do you feel about your mother living with you for 1 year?
It's fine.
So is she planning to come and live with you for 1 year beginning October 10th?
I don't think there's a set plan for her to stay for exactly 1 year, or how long. We haven't decided the duration of the stay.
But she is coming October 10th?
She has not booked a flight, but that's the time frame we had discussed.
What postgraduate education do you have?
Postgraduate, I took an MBA from NC State.
When did you graduate from that program?
December 2007.
How did you do in terms of academic performance in that program?
I think I finished with a 3.8 GPA.
Were you in the top 10% of the class?
They didn't give us stats like that.
Did they give you any honors or other distinctions?
No.
Did you have a graduation ceremony?
We did.
When was the graduation ceremony?
I believe it was December the 18th.
And who attended that ceremony?
Nancy, our two children, and Gary and Donna.
Did your parents attend?
They were actually traveling internationally at the time and were unable to attend.
And did anybody from your family attend?
No.
Okay. And why did you go back to MBA school?
It was something that Nancy and I talked about. The idea was to move up in the company and be able to make more money and better provide for our children.
So would you say that was a joint decision that you and Nancy made?
Yes.
Did Cisco pay for the MBA program?
Yes, they did.
Did anybody else from Cisco attend the MBA program with you?
With me, there was one individual that I didn't meet. I didn't meet at Cisco, but I met him at the class.
Who's that?
First name, I think it was Arun, A-R-U-N. I don't remember his last name.
Is he with Cisco now?
He works in a different building, different department, so I have no idea.
How long have you been employed at Cisco?
Since we moved down here 8 years ago, so it's the official time is 7 years, 11 months, something like that.
And what's your job title?
Now is IT engineer.
How long have you served in that capacity?
I've been with my current team for approximately 2 years.
When you say your current team, who is on that current team?
I've already given you some of the names before, but Eris Cruz, Frank Mendez was one I didn't give you before. Asif Iqbal. We just hired 3 new employees here. Eric Chima.
How do you spell that?
Chima is Chima.
Is that a new employee here?
Yeah, we hired him about a year ago or so.
Have you worked with him?
Yes.
And is he at the Cisco office in Cary?
Yes. Well, our Cisco office in RTP.
Sorry.
Yes.
Name some other people that you work with at the Cisco office in RTP.
Greg McGlushy. Names is drawing a blank here. I can provide you a list of names if you want. Most of the people we have on our list are contacts, and I don't know, for some reason I just can't think of the names right now.
Do you have an office in a building?
Currently, I have an office. Prior to that, for the last 7 years, I've always had a cubicle.
And is the cubicle located in a building in RTP?
Yes.
And who's in the cubicle next to you?
Eric Chima is one, and the person behind me it's currently empty.
Anybody other than Eric Chima that works in close proximity to your cubicle?
Yes. Directly across from my cubicle is Tom Hill.
What is Tom, Hill?
Yes.
What's his job responsibility?
He's manager of a small team of 10 or so engineers.
Do you know anybody on his team?
They bounce around a lot from manager to manager. Personally, I can't think of a name that he works under him.
Would they be in the RTP office?
Yes, everyone that reports to Tom would reside in the RTP office.
How many employees are there in the RTP office?
About 3,000, 2,500, something like that.
And you've given me Tom Hill and Eric Chima. Do you know any other names?
I can give you a ton of names. If I walk back to my office, back and grab my cell phone, yeah, I give you a ton of names.
I mean, as you sit here today, can you recall any of your coworkers?
I can. I'm just drawing a blank. It's not something I had been expected to be asked.
Who's your immediate supervisor?
Shilpa. Her last name's Koh something. You can't really pronounce it. She resides in San Jose, California.
Do you have anybody in the RTP office that you would consider to be over you?
Ed Paradise, the VP for the site.
Ed Paradise?
Yes.
How do you spell that last name?
Just as you would spell Paradise, Paradise, I guess. He works on our floor. We've talked many times.
Is there anybody else that you consider to be your superior or in RTP?
PJ Barber.
And what's his job or her job?
PJ is a man. I believe right now he's director of development for phones. I think it's what he's currently doing.
What is the business of Cisco?
It's pretty wide ranging. It ranges from video conferencing, video surveillance, routers, firewalls, network security, telepresence, many facets. There's lots of business units within Cisco.
Do they sell phones?
They do cell phones, yes.
What's your area of expertise?
My area of expertise is, deployment and support of enterprise voice over IP type deployments.
You'll have to bear with me, what is voice over IP deployments?
So basically, it's instead of, it's voice, basically it's telephones that reside on the same computer network as a computer would.
Is that computer software or is it a phone system or both?
Requires hardware of some sort to do all the brains or the controlling. It requires some piece of hardware.
Do you have technical qualifications that are required to perform your job?
Yes.
Describe those for me.
The qualifications? Like, are you looking for certifications? Is that what
Yes,
okay.
certifications.
A few years ago, I obtained Cisco's expert qualification in voice over IP.
What does that mean?
Basically, the certification requires, I think, a 200 or 300 multiple choice test that's online, and then an 8-hour or 7-hour lab that's hands-on.
And so does that mean you're designated or certified as an expert in voice over IP?
Within Cisco's realm of equipment and software and hardware, yes.
How many other people share that certification?
Currently, it's probably between 500 and 700.
How many people in the RTP office?
I couldn't tell you. They don't break it down by that.
Well, tell me your job description. What do you do during the day?
Currently, my job is to look at new products that Cisco is deploying in voice, video, and basically deploy them within our office and perform a set of tests on them.
Do you have to understand the products and how they work?
I would have to understand them as well as a customer would.
And give me an example of a type of phone system, maybe the most common one that you're familiar with.
The most common one that the one I work on every day is one that requires multiple servers, hardware for routing data, I guess, between the servers and other hardware that requires the phones to operate, as well as connecting out to some sort of provider like Verizon or Sprint or AT&T, I guess.
And when you go to work, give me sort of a day in the life of your work. First of all, when you're in the office.
The majority of my time I spend on conference calls, probably 5 hours a day I spend on conference calls discussing products and the current status of the testing and development of the products.
And would those be conference calls with potential customers or with in-house?
In-house development and test teams.
And are there certain test teams that you have more frequent contact with?
Not really. Most of the work that I do, I try to represent or simulate a customer. That's kind of my level of knowledge, is what a customer would be expected to know and be able to perform.
Well, when you say you try to simulate, is that what you said, a customer?
Yes, correct.
Explain that to me. When you're on the conference call, you're simulating a customer?
My team tries to represent what a typical customer would be faced with if they deployed the product as designed and as expected by the development and product management teams.
Who would be a typical customer?
We try to represent a typical enterprise customer with 1,000 to 10,000 or 100,000 employees.
Okay. And they would be buying a phone system from Cisco and they would be asking questions? Is that?
So the idea would be that they would be working with some sort of partner or some team to deploy the system and design it. What the expectation of my team and our team is the level of knowledge of a typical customer able to design this, support this, deploy this product adequately.
Do you have to understand and be able to work all of the technology and all of the phone systems that you sell?
Yeah, we have to be able to deploy them as a customer would, yes.
And how many systems do you yourself personally?
How many systems do I personally?
How many systems do you personally oversee or have knowledge?
My team supports a system in San Jose, one in Boulder, Colorado, one in RTP, one in Galway, Ireland, and another one in India.
And what VoIP, tell me again what that stands for and what it means.
Basically, it's putting voice traffic over the same network as a computer's email, web traffic would be put on.
Are the Cisco employees able to install VoIPs in their own residences?
If they had sufficient hardware, yeah, I guess so. Anyone could, I guess, if you had the right hardware.
Have you ever done that?
I did.
When did you do that?
It would probably be after probably January, February of 2008.
And what was the purpose for you installing VoIP in your residence?
We were, at Cisco, we were deploying a new wireless phone, and I thought it would be a good opportunity for me to use the phone more on a day-to-day basis. And the other necessity of it was that the kids had wrecked the last of our wireless phones, and we had to purchase a new one. So I figured, rather than buying a new telephone system, why not utilize some of the phones that I had via Cisco.
Does that phone system enable you to monitor calls from remote locations?
No.
Is there any phone system that you have access to that enables you to monitor phone calls from a remote location?
Can you define monitor? Do you mean can I tell if someone's on the phone or off the phone?
Can you listen in on a call?
No, that's not part of Cisco's. That's not part of the technology we deploy.
Well, hypothetically, if a large corporation wanted to monitor the calls of their employees.
That is a product that Cisco deploys, but it's not one that my team works on or I have any knowledge of. It's a completely separate business unit that deals more with call centers.
So your testimony would be that you don't know how to monitor a call from a remote location?
To listen in on a call from a remote location, correct.
What about to tell if somebody is on the phone from a remote location?
If it's within the same network, if I'm an RTP, I could tell if someone's on a phone call in San Jose, yes, if I have access to that network.
Could you initiate a call from a remote location?
If I was in RTP and my computer was on the same network as a phone in San Jose, yes.
Have you ever had an occasion to initiate a call from a remote location?
It's not something that comes into our test plan. We try to avoid it. If anything, we try to prove that it can't happen. We try to avoid it happening. It's not something a typical customer would ever try to do.
Who's we?
Our team. Our alpha team is what we call it.
And when you say we try to avoid it happening, explain what you mean by that.
Well, a typical customer would not want to initiate a phone call where they're not located at.
Do you have personal knowledge as to how to initiate a call from a remote location?
Some of our software can do that, yes. Can control a hard phone, yes.
So you, as well as the software, know how to do that?
As long as you're on the same computer network in the same office or company, yes.
Okay. Have you ever done that?
Yes. You know, for the voice over IP system, for the most part, there's no difference from the phone being in front of you or a phone being 100 miles away as long as you're on the same computer network. That's kind of the idea behind it.
How would you rate your job performance at Cisco?
Exceptional. The last 2 years have been rated top 10%.
And describe the rating system? Who rates you?
It's a number of factors. Basically, the rating system, they've basically got a couple different categories. They have top 10%, top 25%, core 65%, and then bottom 25% or bottom 10% or something. And your manager and their manager rank all the employees under their department or division.
Who's your manager?
Shilpa.
Shilpa, last name?
Koh something. No one can pronounce her last name, so we don't try.
Okay. And she's in San Jose, California?
Correct.
And who is her manager?
Her new manager, Bill King.
Did you say new manager? Or?
Yeah, yes. Last year, maybe the last 8 months, there was a new opening, and he moved into that position.
Was he one of the ones that rated you the top 10%?
Yes.
Bill King?
Yes.
And where is his office located?
He is in San Jose, California as well.
Anybody that rates you, is there anybody that rates you in RTP?
No.
Are you currently working from home?
Right now I am currently working from home, yes.
Why?
In discussions with Cisco, we just thought it would be less disruptive for myself and for others in the office if I worked from home.
Who did you have discussions with at Cisco to decide to work at home?
It would be the HR managers. We've got some in RTP and some in San Jose.
And give me the names of the people that you had discussions with.
One of the ones in San Jose would be Judy Botello.
Spell the last name.
I'd be guessing here, but it'd be Buthello.
And in RTP, who have you had discussions with about working from home?
The one in RTP would be Xena. I think it's Xena, and I don't have her last name handy. I don't remember it.
Is she the only one in RTP that you've had discussions with about working from home?
I believe so, yes.
When did you have that discussion with her?
We've been talking over the last 3 months about this.
By phone or face-to-face?
By phone.
From your landline or your cell phone?
Probably both.
And is she in the office in RTP?
Yes.
How many conversations have you had with her?
Maybe 5 or 6. I don't actually recall exactly the number.
And who initiated the idea of working from home?
Cisco Systems suggested it.
I'm asking for the name of the person that...
To my knowledge, I believe it was Judy that suggested it.
And who conveyed it to you?
To the best of my knowledge, it was Judy that told me that.
Judy from the San Jose office?
Yes.
And what exactly did she tell you?
She suggested initially that I take some time off and be able to give me some time to deal with, dealing with grief. And then she said once I was ready to return back to work, to contact her. I did so, and she suggested working from home for a few weeks and then coming back into the office.
When did you contact her?
I don't have the exact date. We've talked a handful of times over the last 3 months.
Well, when you contacted her, for what purpose was it for? To try to go back to work? Or?
It was to talk about going back to work, yes.
And when did she suggest that you would be going back to work, or did she?
Working in or physically at the Cisco office?
Physically at the Cisco office.
We had discussed a date in early October.
Is there a set date?
We have not followed up with a set date. We had talked initially about next week.
When I asked you about your office, I think you said you had a cubicle before, but now you have an office.
Correct. That's right.
And what floor of the building is your office located on?
On the 3rd floor.
Who's in the office next door to yours?
Next door to mine would be Judy. I don't remember her last name. And next to her is Kimberly Quinn. But Judy, I don't remember her last name, sorry.
Describe the physical setup of the floor that you're on. Is it a hall with a number of offices? Or?
I guess it'd be a rectangle with elevators and offices down the middle of the aisle, and cubicles around the outside of the floor plan, and then 2 small rows of offices perpendicular to the rectangle, I guess.
Who else works on that floor?
There's probably 200 of us on the floor. mostly engineers and testers.
How long have you been on that floor?
About 2 years.
Can you tell me the names of the people that work on the floor?
Sure. We got PJ Barber, Kara Adams, Kimberly Quinn, Judy, Ed Paradise, Charlie Amadea, Susan Brickwell, Mark Kepke, there's lots, but I'm just trying to think of all the names.
Do you socialize with any of those people?
Socialize at the office, yes.
What do you mean by socialize at the office?
We'll go for lunch, that sort of thing.
Do you usually go out to lunch every
No.
day?
We, I'd say as a rule of thumb, we always eat in the cafeteria in the next building.
Who is your best friend at Cisco?
I'd probably say Greg Maglucci.
Name some other... Well, let me ask you about Greg. Does he live in Cary?
He lives in Raleigh, North Raleigh.
Is he married?
Yes.
What's his wife's name?
Suzanne.
And where does Greg work in relation to where you work?
The next cubicle over, basically.
Do you stay in contact with him?
Part of our function at the office is our teams work closely together, so yes.
When's the last time you spoke to him?
Maybe before Nancy's death.
Why is that?
Why have we not spoken since Nancy's death? Is that your question?
That's my question.
Okay, so I just... I don't know, I just didn't... I haven't want to talk about... I didn't want to talk about Nancy's death to a lot of people. I figured that's my feelings. And
Has he contacted you?
no, I don't believe so.
Do you have any other best friends at Cisco?
I would say he's probably my closest friend at Cisco.
Do you have any other friends at Cisco?
I would say most of my coworkers I would consider friends.
Are there any friends at Cisco that you have spoken to since Nancy died?
I've spoken to most of my team, both the ones in San Jose and the ones in RTP. I've got a couple emails from coworkers expressing their condolences. I've got a few phone calls from coworkers as well.
Is there anybody, can you name a person that you would consider a friend that you have spoken to since Nancy's death at Cisco?
I would say most of my team I've spoken to, and I would consider them friends.
And I'm asking for their names.
Oh, I've already provided most of the names. So, Eris Cruz, Frank Mendez, Iqbal, Shilpa, Mark Oden, Eric Chima.
Have you had lunch with anybody from Cisco since Nancy died?
No.
Have you socialized with anyone from Cisco since she died?
No, I have not. Well, I'm sorry, what was the last question?
Have you socialized with anybody from Cisco since your wife died?
Yes, I've socialized with Scott Hyder.
What does Scott Hyder do?
Currently kind of works as a program manager, project manager within Cisco.
Is he in the same building that you're in?
No.
Where is his office located?
He works in Building 5 in the campus.
Is he Heather Mature's former husband?
Yes.
When did you and Scott Hyder become friends?
Scott and I had we met at work. We worked at one time. We worked in the same floor, and I think we met through a coworker. We went out for dinner, or had a barbecue at a coworker's house, and that's how we kind of.
When?
7 years ago, give or take.
Was that before you had sex with his wife?
Yes.
And when did you meet his wife?
I believe I met his wife at that same barbecue.
7 years ago.
Yes.
And
Can I just back up? Did you ask if I've gone to lunch with anyone at Cisco?
since Nancy died.
So I guess I've probably been to lunch with Scott since Nancy's death.
Where would you have gone to lunch with Scott?
I think just at his house. I think we just had a sandwich or something in his home. I don't think we actually went out for lunch, but I just want to kind of clarify that.
Okay. Is Scott aware of your relationship with his former wife?
Yes, he is.
When did he become aware of that?
I'm not. I don't have the exact date or when he was aware of it.
Have you and he discussed it?
We have discussed it briefly, yes.
When?
Since Nancy's death, actually.
And where were you when you discussed it? Can we take a time out? It sounds like we're getting down to a minute and I was wondering what that meant.
Going off the record, this marks the end of this number 1 in the deposition of Bradley Cooper. The time is 12.